It's time, yes. Brrr, bring out the celebrations because there's 100 episodes of GarageBand Weekly here on Studio Live today. Welcome. Hello. I hope you are doing well. If it's your first time here, my name's Pete and this is Studio Live today. This is, in fact, GarageBand Weekly, our weekly dose of all things GarageBand. And this week, we got a bit of a special show. I thought instead of just me sitting here and talking about all the news and views of the week, I would bring in some special guests. And the first special guest I'd like to bring in is a friend of the channel. He's a GarageBand expert. He's a guru. He's the one, the only, Mr. Patrick from GarageBand Guide. Oh, Patrick, it's not my birthday, mate. It's 100th
Hey, that works, right? Happy birthday!
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I guess so. GarageBand Weekly is 100, so it's about to just toddle off this world. Then, if it's
spared no expense, mate.
That was brilliant.
Definitely not from my my son's birthday.
Not recycled and upcycled whatsoever. Patrick, for those who don't know you and who haven't been around this, I don't know who in this group would not know you. But what is the 30-second GarageBand guide and Patrick's story for those who don't know it?
Don't know it. I'm Patrick from the GarageBand Guide. It's a website and a YouTube channel which teaches you how to use GarageBand on your Mac or on your iPad or iPhone or iPod Touch. Are they still a thing? I have no idea.
They are. You can still use it. You can still upgrade them to iOS 15, which is a little bit crazy. Yeah, totally.
Wow.
We'll talk about that. So what we're doing in this show is that we're going to go through a few different things. And for those that are here live, feel free to share your comments because we can throw you up on the screen just like this. Yes, righty dokie, happy 100. So Mars Capone, who's here. Righty dokie, skip, righty dokie, mate, skip. So if you do have comments or questions, we can do this. We can say hello to SM Borthwick, to Dr. Zorders. The OG, Steve, a.k.a. Clearly Epic. We'll be talking a little bit about him and the past there. We've got Vortex, Mobile Music Pro. Hope you're doing well. We were just talking. Your ears must have been burning, Vortex. We were just talking about you. Timothy, hello to you. Thomas Christ, the one and only Jade Star. I have an idea. A bunch of folks here. So if you do have comments as we go through, do let us know. Now, we are waiting on our other guests. So we are going to kick on and go through the show. We are very much hoping that our friend Dan Baker will be able to join us during the show. The man is so busy, he's probably out playing a gig, wheeling his wheelbarrow amp and shovel bass back into the house as we speak. And if you remember the 50th show, Dan had a few issues with internet connectivity. So I've got this mental image of him running around his garden at the moment with his phone in the air, trying to find a signal so that he can join us. But we will kick on and get things started anyway. So the way I wanted to approach this was to talk a little, to get a bit nostalgic, to go back in time and talk about the history of GarageBand, then jump into a little bit of the present day in terms of what Patrick and myself and maybe Dan are doing with GarageBand, and then the future. So what does the future hold for GarageBand? And my StreamYard has just told me that another guest may have just dropped on in. So if you're ready, I'm going to hit this button here, and we're going to be joined by the one and only Mr. Dan Baker. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, good evening. And I'm so sorry I'm late. I had a few connection issues, but it's fine now. So
we were speculating that, mate, because we remember the 50th show where you were jumping from room to room trying to find a signal. So we have visions of you running around your backyard with your phone in the air trying to find a connection.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, you've come just in time because we just did introductions, and I know that many folks know you and your work here on YouTube. But for those who don't, what's the 30-second Dan Baker story? What's your connection with GarageBand and your history with this wonderful app?
Well, I started using it to teach music because I had an old iPad 2. I've still got it, actually. It still works. Nice. The screen is smashed to bits, but it was when it was 8 channels only, 8 tracks only, and with a reverb and an echo control, and that was it.
Yep.
It was amazing even then. I got the guy through his A-level qualification with jury, and I had to make a backing track for him, and I did it on GarageBand, and it was so easy to work with. You didn't need to plug anything in; you just literally just use the screen. Oh, I think am I?
Yeah, you've had a few problems. You had a very stylish looking image of yourself there for a while though, so it did pause on a very nice image of you. So yeah, using it as a teaching tool to start with, and which is amazing. I know that that has progressed into this channel here. So I didn't mention it before, but you can jump over to both Dan's channel, which is there, Dan Baker, and of course the GarageBand Guide. Excellent. And I wanted to give a couple of rounds of applause, if we can, in the chat here, that Dan Baker recently crossed 30,000 subscribers on his channel. Patrick at the GarageBand Guide, 100,000 subscribers. So if we can get some shouts in the channel there, because that's some amazing stuff. And who would have thought that the sort of stuff that we do, so many people want to hear about, which is great. And I love the fact that the GarageBand has gone from... Yeah, as you said at the start there, like a eight channel, and we'll talk about the history here now, but like eight tracks and like 2 effects and nothing much else. And now, 32 tracks. I know, Dan, you tried to melt your iPhone SE recently by adding as many tracks and effects as you possibly could, and it stood up to it. So it can do amazing things.
Yeah, and I failed.
You failed to melt it. It didn't happen. You weren't able to. You weren't able to destroy it. We'll find out a bit about Patrick's history. Yes, we'll find out a bit about Patrick's history with GarageBand in a moment.
It is amazing. I mean, even just doing that. Even just making that. Oh.
It's all right. We've got some satellite level delay going on, I think, with Dan at the moment. So you might have to drop out and come back in, Dan, and see if you can get back in sync, because I think we're a little bit out of sync there. So while we wait for Dan to go out and pray to the Wi-Fi gods, Patrick, your history with GarageBand. Now, I was joking in the pre-show with you that you've told this story before, but there's probably a bunch of people that haven't heard it. What was it that got you into GarageBand in the first place, and what was the origin story of GarageBand?
The origin story, yeah. It was my wife that got me into it to begin with. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously. She had a iBook G4 back in kind of 2010, 2011. We'd lived together for about a year when I was bemoaning my lack of being able to record music. Obviously, I was irritating her with my guitar and stuff in the living room, and she mentioned she had this program on a computer that I could use that would allow me to record and kind of fiddle with the music that I was recording and produce things. And I would kind of opened it up, looked at it, and kind of, you waited this long to tell me about this? What is this? And it was GarageBand 1. It was the first version that hadn't been updated or anything, and it was fantastic. It was great. Absolutely fell in love with it. I'd been to music college several years before that, and they were using Cubase for the kind of engineering section of the course, which, as a kind of a newcomer to digital audio workstations, I just found completely impenetrable. I think it's got better now, but at the time it was just gobbledygook, and it kind of put me off the engineering side of things for quite a while. So to have this program that was and is so intuitive and so user friendly, I just completely fell in love with it. First used the iOS version when it came out in 2013, I believe, on my good old iPhone 4S. I think it was 2013. Guaranteed someone in the chat will be able to correct me if I'm wrong. Jade. So that's before like Interapp Audio, before AUV3, anything like that. It was really like a closed off version of it, very much similar to what Dan was describing there in his older iPad. Just 8 tracks, just 2, an echo and a reverb effect you could maybe put on things. And Audio Bus was the only way that you could have different apps, music apps, speak to each other. And kind of very different from the desktop version, but obviously now it's grown into something that is vastly different and much more usable, and obviously very much not an industry standard, but a very, very powerful, good program that we all know and we all use.
Yeah, very, very cool indeed. And in terms of the education side, what made you think? Because you probably had this question. They're like, "What's just a bloke like you think he can do teaching other people GarageBand?" So, what got you into the whole? Hey, not only is this cool and I can use it, but I think I think I can actually help other people learn how to use this.
When I was trying to learn how to use it, nobody had any. I mean, obviously, I used YouTube even back then to kind of search for how does this work? How do you EQ this? What is compression? And there was nobody that was really creating tutorials about these things that was using GarageBand as their digital audio workstation, apart from Lewin at GarageBand and Beyond, which I'm sure a lot of the viewers will be familiar with. He's obviously like the godfather of GarageBand on YouTube, but nobody else was. So there really was kind of like that gap there where people were looking for instruction using this program specifically, and nobody really was. So yeah, I stepped into that gap.
Very, very, very cool indeed. I wanted to give a shout out to our friend Vortex there for the super chat there. Yes, please do hit like. So you got three things to do. Go down, hit the like button, then go. There's two channel links down there. There's Dan Baker and there's Patrick at the GarageBand Guide. So anyone who's not already checking you out, and I'm sure they were, Dan, we seem to have a smoother, more fluid version of you now there. So the Wi-Fi gods, you must have prayed to them and they must have answered you. So what got you into so obviously you're using GarageBand for your teaching, because if you don't know, like Dan is not, like me and Patrick are like, yeah, we create some videos on YouTube. Dan's music career spans about 47 different things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But what got you into the YouTube and the education, obviously as being an educator, but creating YouTube videos, what got you into that in the first place?
Well, somebody, I know a guitarist who does a lot of black metal, and I met him on a gig, and he said that the YouTube, well, he said, to quote, pays his mortgage, and I said, "Ooh. I'm sorry, what did you just say?" And he said, "Yeah, this I get." And he showed me, and he got me into it and said, "Right, you got to do this and get you this and this and this and this, all these settings, and make these videos and put these on." Just gave me a bit of advice, really. I mean, I know what I do is different from him, and YouTube has got a bit more. It's got a bit more tricky to sort of make a living out of, but it's still a good income stream. But I got into it from him, and my first video was that GarageBand for iOS 10, as it was at the time, and it's my most successful video to date. And I just put lots of stuff up. I talk about all sorts of stuff, but I use GarageBand a lot when I'm sort of eking out ideas, or I want a really, really good drum rhythm that just really easily from the start. I'll often do that before, if I've got Logic open or something, I'll often get GarageBand out first and jam along with it. And it's just, it enables you to really get cracking with something without having to deal with all the sort of keyboards and USB connections and all of that stuff. I just use everything on screen, really, on the iPad. But yeah, it's something that I do always use it. I use it all the time when I'm teaching, especially when because I teach a lot of rock and pop, piano and guitar, and I just make backing tracks up. If somebody wants to do something, instead of going for expensive software that slows things down, just stick it in GarageBand, just drums, bass and a piano sound, and then just slow the tempo down. And it's that easy, and they've all got Apple phones, so you just fling the project across on AirDrop, and there you are, done.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I did. It was 2007 that the video we were just showing there for folks. If you haven't checked that one out, amazingly, the cool thing about, I always often say that the great thing about GarageBand iOS is that it's pretty much the same as it was in 2017. As soon as we hit version 2, even back in iOS 10 days, like 5 iOS versions ago, it's almost the same. Like if you come over to here, you can see that the layout's not much different. You got the same strings, you got the same guitars, the same keyboards. So that video that's had 586,000 views just quietly is still really relevant today, and I'm sure there are still people that are finding GarageBand GarageBand on their iPads for the first time, and they're going, "Oh, what's this bloke doing 4 years ago?" And then they open their iPad, and it looks almost the same. Sure, we've added some additional things. You got the Alchemy synths, and you got a whole bunch of other stuff in there now. But a lot of that stuff, like you look at the drummer there, and apart from having a whole bunch of new different drummers that they've added with all the different sound packs, it's the same thing. So I think it's done us all a favor that Apple's slowness in updating their products has actually helped our videos remain relevant for many years to come. So,
and I've still got the same cat as well.
Oh, there you
Hey.
go. Oh, I did
Do you,
see the cat in
do
the
you
back
still
there.
dad rap?
Absolutely, yeah. Still, the cat's still chilling on the sofa, just like on the video.
Just like, because I did love that. I must admit, I stole a little bit from Dan's video production because we all do that to each other here in the YouTube community. You're like, oh, I like what he did there with the overhead cam. So I think in a few tutorials I did back in 2017 and ET, I'm just like, I'm going to go with the Dan Baker layout on this one with the overhead cam and then the face cam and the separate one. I had no cat though, so I couldn't employ the cat. But yeah, this one here was my classic. This is my introduction to Dan Baker: flat cap, overhead cam, and amazing stuff. So very, very cool. So Patrick, you haven't gotten away here because we're going to go into your past here as well, and probably the most classic video that I remember of yours. And I actually watched this learning GarageBand Mac like a week ago because I'm a GarageBand iOS user. I've only just started playing with a Mac. I've only had a Mac for less than a year. And when I was looking, not surprisingly, for GarageBand tutorials, this one that has nearly 2 million views, and it is top 5 tips for beginners from 3 years ago. And look, there's the classic Patrick image there. Looking smooth. But this one, when you sat down, you went, oh yeah, you know what? I'll whack together 5 tips for beginners and throw it into a video here. Did you think that 3 years later you'd be sitting here with nearly 2 million views on that one particular
That's amazing.
Video? I would have loved to say I had any kind of control over that, but no. Not at all. We're all slaves to the YouTube algorithm. It just kind of promotes whatever it wants to promote. Yeah, it's incredibly lucky. It's good that a lot of people's first encounter with me on YouTube when they're searching about GarageBand is this, because it is a fairly kind of useful video, I guess. But yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. Was that 2018? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. No, but and again, it holds up, and 100% holds up. And again, even though GarageBand, we've gone through multiple Mac OS changes and we've gone through multiple things, the basic fundamentals are still the same. So I literally was trying to work out how to add effects and add AU plugins, and I couldn't work it out. And I just went, oh, I know, GarageBand guide, add plugins, and that's where it was. And it's the same, I know, with Dan. So one of the first videos I watched of Dan's was the organ, because Dan, you're a musician first and like a GarageBand YouTube creator second, you've used the analog versions of all this gear. So when you were explaining about the organ and the drawbars and how it all worked and how it all came together, I was like, oh, I didn't know any of this stuff. And I think one of the things that you've been impressed by, and you can comment on this, is how authentic, I guess, a lot of the instruments, whether it's the strings or the piano or the organ, that have been implemented into GarageBand. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's something you've mentioned in a heap of your videos. Yeah,
I mean, the strings for me are highly impressive. I'm a violinist first and foremost. That's my classical training.
Yep.
And you can pick a string sound on Logic and just hit the keyboard, and it just doesn't. You have to really work with it to get it to give you some functions. Whereas on GarageBand, stroking the bow up and down slowly to get a quiet sound. I mean, that is just genius. It is completely genius, and Apple obviously consult the very best people when they design stuff, and it absolutely shows. I mean, I'm not connected with Apple in any way. I'm not I'm not a salesman for Apple, but hats off to them. Somebody told me to stop praising Apple once and I thought, credit where credit's due. I mean, the organ is great as well. It's really, really nice. I used to fix mostly cables for Hammond B3s and Leslie 122s when I was at EMI in the 90s. And we used to fix these things and oil them and do all sorts of other things. I mean, they were bomb proof, so they didn't. Yes, that one is at a local school. It's a D series Hammond, which is basically the kind of one of the top of the line organs. But the one on GarageBand, it contains everything you need and nothing that you don't. You know, obviously, you know, it hasn't got the absolute specifics like full range Hammond, but well, the sound is really, really good. I'm really impressed with it, and you know, it's always a useful tool to have, and it's nice to see it included.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't played around with it, I did a knockoff video, which was like just, you know, a couple of minutes to show here's what a drawbar is, and here's how you change the chorus and the percussion. But Dan actually goes into what it does and what it means and how it actually relates to the original instrument and what the Leslie cabinet was and how that actually works and impacts the sound. So again, I learned a whole heap, and don't let the fact that it was iOS 10 and 11 fool you. It's as relevant in iOS 15 as it was in the old days in iOS 15. Very, very cool. So I wanted to talk again a little bit about the history and about the history of these gents. And look, I know many of you already know all this stuff, but there are so many hidden gems in there, and we'll talk about a couple of other things. I'll save a few little surprises for a bit later when we get into it. But what is your? I guess that's the past. What is happening in the present? So Patrick, for you and for the GarageBand guide, what's been happening over, say, the last 6 months, and what are you working on at the moment? What's happening in the world of GarageBand that's exciting you, or that you're sinking your teeth into right now?
Are you just going to completely skip your turn, Pete? Is that how this is going to work?
Yeah, basically. I think people hear me rant on a basically daily basis. So that is a good. Okay, I'll give you the 30-second of me, because I want folks to benefit from your knowledge here today. But for me, it was I watched Patrick and I went, Patrick's not doing enough iOS. I'll just do some of the same thing as he's doing, but for iOS. And then I saw Dan Baker and said, that's how I'll do it. So that was all I did. I basically am just an absolute copycat. I said that's how I'm going to roll, and hey, it worked. So what can you say?
So close to the actual truth, though, Pete. It's quite scary.
It's crazy close to the truth. No, it was exactly the same as you, Patrick, where I wasn't finding all of the level of detail that I wanted. There was only it was you and maybe two other people back in 2015, 2016 that were actually doing GarageBand iOS videos, and I'm like, well, I got to learn anyway. I might as well record it and document it as I'm learning, and they just started throwing videos out there. And I think the only additional point I add to what you folks said is that the whole YouTube algorithm thing and the whole how do you know what's going to get 50 views and what's going to get 50,000 views, you really don't. But I think the thing I love about what both of you have done is that you just keep doing. Like, I think there's an old thing that's you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So when you have a video and it absolutely flops and it doesn't go anywhere and no one watches it, you can do two things. You can put your tail between your legs and run away, or you can go, well, that was a learning experience. People don't want to see that. Let's try this and do something else. So that's all I've done for the last 6 years. And yeah, there's still videos out there. When you sort my videos by order, and I did this for you two to find your most popular videos before the show, I didn't do it for you and do the reverse one where I found your least watched video. But whenever I do that and I see some videos there, I'm like, oh, I was actually really proud of that one. So people are missing out that they didn't watch that.
Now that you mention that, I need to make my own version of how to get fluff out of an iPhone port video, just to match your. Have you not got like 1 million views on that video or something?
Yeah, that's my sad claim to fame. Is that
absolutely typical of YouTube, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And Dan, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but of all the videos that I've put hours of heart and soul and effort into, the video that has 3 times more views than any is where I got my iPhone and I said, here's how you use a toothpick to get fluff out of your iPhone jack if it won't charge.
Amazing.
And it's what people look for, and I get comments on that to this day on a daily basis.
Excellent. All from me.
It's all just Patrick under different accounts doing different things. So, see, that's why you know Patrick is a good host, because he's just like, what about you, Pete? Do you have anything? So
not letting you off with it.
I know. You don't want he's just a lazy bugger. He's just getting us in here to do all the work. Before we hear from Patrick about what's going on at the GarageBand Guide at the moment, for those live, if you're here, we've still got another 35 minutes to chat here with the gents. So if you do have any questions, you can help us out by just putting the word question at the start of your comment in the chat, and any really tricky ones I will handball directly to Dan and Patrick, because I don't want to answer anything hard. Jade says that's how I found Pete trying to get dirty out of my hole. Yeah. Thank you, Jade. Patrick, what's going on at the GarageBand Guy? What's on the barbecue?
I mean, much the same, really. I mean, kind of you'll know yourself that your audience kind of let you know what they want to see. So I mean, I've been lucky enough to like yourself that Apple have acknowledged my existence and sent me some hardware, which is quite nice. And again, getting the audience and the viewers involved with what they want to know about that kind of hardware. Talked a little bit a few weeks ago about GarageBand iOS in particular, and about what kind of features I wanted to see added to it in the future, and what kind of features that the community at large wanted to see added to it. Some more of that kind of stuff as well, and then kind of, I think iOS as a platform is becoming incredibly interesting. Obviously, I do a bit of both, but I think it's very much in terms of kind of apps at the moment. It's very much like a gold rush. I think we're very much in a golden age of iOS apps in terms of the sheer choice and the price that they are at the moment. I think we might see a shift in the market when it comes to iOS apps at some point in the near future. I think for developers to kind of be able to pay their mortgages and buy food and things, prices will have to change somewhat. So I think it's a really interesting time for iOS music making at the moment. It kind of feels like the whole thing is just on the edge of something. I don't know, this year, was it last year? Last year and this year, when all the hubbub about whether Apple were going to release Logic on iOS and where we're going to get this final all-encompassing professional level DAW on iOS. And obviously that didn't happen. So it's kind of, it's quite an exciting situation, an exciting place that iOS music making is in, but also, kind of maybe not hitting the potential that it could at the moment. So I'm quite interested in that and kind of exploring that a little bit, kind of going forward, as they say.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And for those in the chat, let us know what you think of that, because I think you're right. There's been this gap reduction, I guess, between, because for both of you and for myself, you'd know that back in the days using, well, it used to be tape versus a digital DAW. Tape versus computer was the big sort of thing. If you were recording to tape or recording to an actual standalone bit of hardware or recording to a computer, we've now got the same thing with computer to iOS and to tablet or to mobile phone, where that gap is reducing, where you say that, as Dan was talking about, when you started out with GarageBand 1 that had 8 tracks and 2 effects, you couldn't really compare that to using 64 channels in Cubase. But now there's literally no difference between whether you're recording on a Mac, a PC, or your iPhone SE and trying to melt it. So it's been interesting to see that happen over time. And I think you're right with the apps as well. As you know, well, as many people know, we're actually in this, like you say, golden age where you can still get a 99-cent, a $4.99, a $9.99 app on your iOS device that might be $100 for the equivalent. Or you might get it for free. You might get the GarageBand equivalent of the Hammond B3 and be able to use that absolutely fine in your tracks. If you wanted to get yourself a Hammond app on for your PC, it might be $100 to $200. So, we do have accessibility, which is great. Before we hear from Dan about what his plans are for the Dan Baker channel, thank you to Alex Backus, who has made a donation. We do appreciate that. I'll split that. So that's £1.67 for each of us there, gents. That's cool.
Makes my whole night worth it.
I'll write the checks at the end of the show. But thank you to you. And once again, if anyone has any questions or comments on anything we're talking about, go ahead and throw them in the chat. And even if you've just made yourself a tuna sandwich, as Mars Capone has, you can let us know about that as well. So, Dan, what's happened? So you are, again, you are a man who wears many hats. You are, for those that don't know, you are a music examiner. You are a professional gigging musician. You are a songwriter and composer and creator, as well as a YouTube content creator, and probably 17 other things that I haven't mentioned. So what's the plans for the channel? And you do a lot of other things outside of GarageBand now. Is GarageBand still something that you go to on a regular basis?
It is. Over the whole COVID pandemic, I mean, I've been doing lots of hospital gigs out in the courtyards. We're just back on the wards now, but we've still got 35,000 cases a day. So it's still very much with us. And I've been using iReal Pro, which is like a jazz backing track thing. So I play jazz guitar and violin, but I've had a few requests every time I've gone into the hospital. Oh, could you play this next time? Could you play that? And it's all sort of rock and pop stuff. So I've been using GarageBand to come up with backing tracks. So I just take my iPhone with me with the track on, and you can put some backing vocals and make it sound really nice in the courtyard, and you're just playing along with the guitar and singing the top line, and it's just the easiest way to get a really good backing track, short of just going out and buying a bespoke one. But you can make it any style you want. It's GarageBand really does have it's got so many places within the market that nothing else has, including for these gigs. So, and of course, if it's like a bit of blues or something, you just leave it going round and round and round, and then just do a fade out at the end. If you don't want to be specific. And so I do use it as more of a sort of workhorse rather than sort of getting deep into sort of the alchemy synths, for example. But it just never ever fails to amaze me how good the thing is, how good quality it is, and things like the strings they're outstandingly good for something that's free, and coming from a violinist, who knows what a solo I don't really use a solo string sound on it. But for the chords, and especially the pizzicato and all of that, it's just really, really usable. That's it. It's massively usable. So yeah, I think at the moment with things like doing these hospital gigs, and when I didn't have many gigs elsewhere, I used to do some busking. Done much more busking in the last sort of 18 months than I ever have done. And I'll take GarageBand out as well. It's just playing on the streets, making up a backing track. And if somebody came up and asked and requested one once, I said, I haven't got that one, but I sat there, and about 6 or 7 minutes later, I had a backing track for it.
Yeah.
So I just put my headphones in and just made a track up straight away on the street, plugged it into the amp, went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just did the tune. And that's how easy it is to get something really quickly. Not only that, it sounds good. It's the sound quality is good. So yeah, it's a real game changer for live music.
And that's what I think, and why I wanted to chat to you and to Patrick, and why I get so many different people, because I think everyone uses GarageBand differently, and people often say to me, they're like, but don't you and Patrick and Dan and Lewin and all these people make all the same videos, and don't you all secretly hate each other? But the thing is that we all do things completely differently. Like I'm not out there playing gigs and making backing tracks, and like you say, you're probably not here salivating over the latest Mark Ronson pack that's just been released by Apple. And I'm not on Wish.com buying cheap crap to try and use with GarageBand like Patrick. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use GarageBand, and I'm just showing here actually Dan recording. This was live violin, actually, directly into GarageBand. So one of my songs called Things Change, I played it on a show yesterday. It has violin on there, and it's like 4 separate parts violin. And Dan, you just basically sat down and just cracked this out in like an hour or two, just played it back, recorded it directly in using the built-in mic in your iPad, and it sounds amazing. So even if you want to get real instruments into your GarageBand, there's a way to do that as well, which is amazing. Very good stuff.
Send me another one, Pete. I'll do some more. If you want.
There you go.
If you want some more strings or whatever, just send.
Very cool. I have been meaning to do. I'm like,
send me another one.
I won't hit him up.
I've got the
I'll wait a couple of years.
Now.
There you go. Upgrade of gear. I'm going to, we've got a bit of crackling from Dan, and you're a little out of sync, Dan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very nicely just pop you backstage for around about a minute, just because that tends to help the stream catch up and help your internet recover. So we'll come back to Dan in just a moment. But it's always fascinating to hear about Dan's life, and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the wheelbarrow amp and the shovel bass. minutes. So we'll just let Dan's internet catch up, and then we'll chat to him about that. So Patrick, one of your series that I love the most, and I don't think it gets enough love, is your Wish series. So where you actually bought some rather cheap and nasty, let's just say, gear from wish.com.
That isn't me, by the way, on screen right now. That's not me.
No, that's Patrick. That's Patrick. He bought a tool set. That's
it was a hard lockdown, yeah.
Yeah, there's the landfill generated by all the Wish products that people have bought and been disappointed with over the years.
Yep.
So what sparked this? Why aren't you doing it anymore? And why isn't everyone flocking to these videos? Because they're my absolute favorites that you've done.
I mean, well, you've talked at length already about how much you've plagiarized your entire content strategy from other people, and I did exactly the same for this, Pete, to be honest with you. Yeah, people were doing, I bought such and such on Wish, the cheapest such and such on Wish. I like watching nonsense on YouTube. I caught some of those videos and thought, maybe I could do this for GarageBand. It's literally it. And actually, I did not think it would be as much fun as it was. But really, I mean, you've seen the videos, the kind of nonsense that a lot of this stuff is. It does make it very entertaining to kind of test it and then to watch an idiot like me test it and fail at testing it and the kind of dodgy results that you can get from it. This one you're watching now actually was actually pretty good. I've still got it up there.
I was going to say, this
genuinely.
I meant to select one of the bad ones, but no, this is one where I think you bought one for about 15 quid for
20 quid, or
20, yeah, and it actually sounded okay. And these are the BM800s that if I ever get a comment from anyone on YouTube, it's like, I just plugged in my BM800. Why doesn't it sound like a Shure SM7B? And I'm like, because you paid $20 for it, sunshine. You didn't pay 500. So exactly. you get what you pay for. But yeah, look, and I always say, I like that.
I think you'd be nicer than that, Pete, when you replied. You wouldn't be as harsh as that, you know.
What's in my head and what comes out on the keys and the keyboard are two very different things. So, I generally am a bit nicer in person. But if you haven't caught those videos, go and watch those. Watch the really horrible ones, though. I think what was the audio interface? You got an audio interface once that just sounded like you were
the guitar one,
underwater or of like just outside in a hailstorm.
Just picking up. It had no kind of like shielding, so it was picking up all kind of weird like alien language from the stratosphere or something. It's just very bizarre.
It was very cool, but it's very, very entertaining. All right, we're gonna bring Dan back, and we'll see because I think with Dan we had about a 5-second satellite delay before when we were talking to you. So we'll see. Hopefully your internet has caught up a wee bit there. The one thing that you're probably known for outside of great GarageBand videos and your daily challenge that you did right throughout the pandemic times is your shovel bass and your wheelbarrow amp. So I know you've probably told this story 1,000 times, but for those that haven't checked it out, and here's the video, it's linked down below if you want to watch it. There's two. There's one just about the shovel bass, there's one about the bass and the wheelbarrow amp. What possessed you to put this together, and how did this whole thing come about?
Well, I saw somebody do some slide guitar on a spade, and it was just the strings, across the handle. And I've always wanted a double bass. I haven't got room for one, and so I just had this crazy. I just went okay, and I went to the local builders merchant and bought the shovel for about £35. And then just got it home and just spent, I suppose it took me about 12 hours in total, over a couple of days to come up with it. And I just went, just bought a piece of oak for the neck. I was gigging last night on it, actually. I played the whole gig on it. And it's quite hard to play. It's a bit sort of clunky, a bit chunky to play, but it always generates a laugh. And I mean, the barrow is mostly at home because it's a bit of I do it for local gigs, and I've actually uprated the amplifier. It just had a little hi-fi amp in before, which was kind of 30 watts or something, but it was driving a big 15-inch speaker, and it wasn't gutsy enough. But a mate of mine bought me an old H&H bass amp, a classic sort of transistor, English transistor bass amp from the 70s, and that's in there now. And actually, it's much more powerful. A bit of rattling coming out the barrow, so I've got to start padding it out and doing all that. But it's is good fun. It's just seeing what's possible, really, and yeah, and it actually it's sort of, it does sound good because I put the pickup in the right place.
Yeah.
In terms of the distance along the scale. So I just got my precision bass and just measured it to get the pickup in the right place. So I just, attached it to the end of the neck, the end of the wood.
Very,
So,
very
yeah.
cool, and it does sound
It's-
amazing. So if you haven't actually listened to it, go and check out the video. I won't play it here because I don't want to mess anything with the sound anymore. But yeah, go and check it out, because the first time I heard it, I'm like, oh, it's going to sound like a shovel playing a bass. It's not going to sound like a real upright bass. And then you listen to it, and it sounds really, really good. Like it sounds, and obviously, yeah, using the measurements, because I'm like, oh god, I can't even fathom starting to work out like the fret spacings and trying to get the measurements for the intonation and making it all sound like it's actually within a scale. But yeah, measuring up a precision and then just copying that seems like a pretty good way to go.
Well, there's no frets on it, so it's I've just measured the distance of the pickup along the string. But so yeah, it's just a completely fretless bass, but it's yeah, the pickup is actually it's a Seymour Duncan Hot Rails. It used to be in my Fender Stratocaster, so it's not even designed for bass frequencies, but it works all the way down to bottom E. It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
all fun.
It's yeah, and so in terms of future projects, what have we got? A hedge trimmer violin? You're going to make a post digging guitar, or what's next that you're going to use garden implements to create instruments from?
I'm not sure. I mean, my brother went to the garden centre the other day and took a photo of all the shovels, and he just said, "I'm at the music shop. Do you need anything?" But yeah, I mean, I had the idea of trying to make a drum kit out of old washing machine drums. But the trouble is, it's just the resonance, and I'd have to build mics in or something. But I'd like to get a band together that uses just homemade stuff. Yeah, that would be really nice. A mate of mine's done something really impressive on a piano, in that he's taken the hammers of the bottom 2 octaves of the piano, and actually mounted an acoustic bass into the piano with hammers that strike the frets. So you get the acoustic bass sound with the left hand and piano on the right hand. But it's one of these things. It's a bit of a labour of love, and he's constantly tinkering. It's a bit like that guy in Denmark. I think he's Danish or Swedish. The Wintergarten marble machine. It's just constant sort of engineering and thinking through problems of how to solve that sort of thing. It's really cool, this thing. But I haven't got any sort of specific things going on at the moment. I was given an old violin a while ago called a Strovile, which has got a horn on it. So essentially, it's a cross between a violin and a gramophone. And cool. It's from about 1910. And I was given that. I do gigs on that because it's really loud. So it would record to wax cylinder and shellac and all of that. But I used it on my Halloween video that I did recently, my Thriller video.
Yeah.
But
that's the other thing. I
haven't got any specific projects.
Yeah. The other thing that, if you haven't checked it out, Dan does some amazing cover versions of songs, and his channel is part education, part fascination, and part entertainment. So it's a mixed bag, but it's a delicious mixed bag of different things over there. So I don't know about you, Patrick, but I'm feeling a little bit really non-handy, and I'm just like, I can install an operating system update.
Go and hammer something after this. Anything.
Okay, I need to go and use a tool for something. I don't know what. Very, very cool indeed. So, what we'll do, we'll jump in and talk. We've got 15 minutes left here, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the future of. I've missed myself again, haven't I? What am I doing on the channel here? Yeah, just seeing what Patrick and Dan are doing, and then copying that again. That's what I'm doing. No, I'm in an interesting crossroad here because. I've been using iOS to create music for the longest time, and motivated by the likes of Patrick, who has sort of shone a light on how cool things like GarageBand Mac are, and others who have been using Logic and all of these other fancy things, and because Apple keep updating their Macs and making them even shinier and more like iOS, I'm kind of sitting on this fence at the moment between iOS and Mac, and haven't quite landed on which side that I'm going to use long term. But instead of that, I'm basically just putting my eggs in two baskets. That's not a term, but I'm still creating iOS videos and still use GarageBand iOS as my daily thing. But I'm dabbling in the world of Mac. So at the moment, I'm annoying everyone because the iOS people are like, could you stop doing Mac videos? And then there's a bunch of people that are like, could you keep doing more Mac videos? Because I don't use iOS anymore. So you have my pledge that I'll continue doing both. I'll try and have my cake and eat it too as we go into the future. We'll do the round table here. I'll give Dan again. I feel bad, Dan, but because you got some crackles and you got some delays, I'm going to pop you just in the backstage while we hear from Patrick about his views on the future of GarageBand. So, where do you think this thing called GarageBand is actually going, Patrick? And what can we expect to see? I know you did a video about the things that are missing from GarageBand iOS. Do you think Logic's coming? What say you on the future? And we'll record this, and then in a couple of years' time, we'll come back and call you out on all your
how wrong I was. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. And then kind of been driven to the dark side and kind of picking up some kind of experience with Mac. That's exactly, I think, what Apple want you to do. I think thinking quite a lot about will we see Logic on iOS? I don't think Apple really want you to be recording and creating purely on the iOS platform or the iPadOS platform. I think they would rather you had an iPad and a Mac, and you start your project, for example, in GarageBand for iOS, and then you come over to your shiny $3,000 Mac, chuck it into Logic Pro, and you finish it there. Yeah. I still think that is kind of what they envision their kind of, or what they want their users' upgrade path to be. Obviously on Mac, it's more straightforward. You go from GarageBand to Logic. It's the same program with stuff removed for GarageBand as Logic is, and it's dead easy. Whereas there isn't that same upgrade path on iOS, and I think there should be. I think Apple maybe need to recognize that people don't want to do that. That's quite an old multi-platform way of working, I think, with all their talk of the iPad being a computer, a fully, this is it, this is all you need. And then the kind of not giving people the ability to perhaps finish off projects and things on their iOS device. I think it's a little bit short-sighted. So, I mean, I don't know. It could go either way. They could either kind of obviously capitalize on the kind of the growing movement of iOS music making and have released something on iPad to rival something like Cubasis 3, which is where I see a lot of people, I don't know if you see this, people who want to stay on the iOS platform but want to move on from GarageBand, which is fair enough. If it doesn't have all the features you want, you're going to be looking for something that does. And a lot of people who like that linear workflow will move to Cubasis 3, which is unfortunate because I think Apple are, if nothing else, they're leaving money on the table. They could be keeping people, you know, if they had a version of Logic on iOS, instead of assuming that people will take the next step to Mac. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does because and it's a frustrating thing, and like you, it's not like people think that we're just having these weekly and daily conversations with Apple and that they're listening to all of our feedback. It doesn't really quite work that way. No. But that being said, I think that the best thing you can do, and you mentioned this in your video, is if you've got feature requests and if you've got ideas, do put them out there, because one person saying one thing once is not going to do a thing. But the power of every user, like Apple are a lot of things, but what they do like to do is is appease the majority. And if they think that something's small enough that only the minority of users care about it, they're probably not going to implement it. If they suddenly think that the majority of iOS users actually want, oh, I don't know, a master track so that you can actually finish your song in GarageBand iOS, and it's a very simple fix, then maybe that's something that they'll actually add in as a priority. But they won't do it if it's just you and me ranting about it. But if they have 1,000 feature requests in a week from about, we should do that. We should just pick one feature and then just start a movement where on one day everyone just spams the Apple feedback form with one feature.
Can you imagine?
And they're just like, oh no, they all want this.
I think it'll be interesting to see as well, because I think we can both say that Apple are probably a bit more open to communicating with people like us now and with the community at large. I think it would be nice to see Apple to take that kind of a step further. If you look at something like BandLab, for example, just if I mention a competitor, just the stream will suddenly break. They have a really great community implementation for their software, for their digital audio workstation, both kind of on Mac and on iOS, where their community kind of features are kind of linked intrinsically into the way that the program works and stuff. So you can share and you can collaborate and stuff, and it's all done on the cloud, and you don't have to worry about kind of airdropping stuff or sending stuff via email. I would like to think that Apple would perhaps look at that and maybe want to do something similar. I don't want to kind of talk us both out of a job, like Pete, but something kind of a little bit more community focused, because that is kind of missing, I think, officially, and from Apple officially having something like that is kind of a big miss.
It is, and look, collaborations are huge in music in general, and featured artists, and the ability to, like, you'd see it as well, like people wanting to share projects and to share things, and when I shared my project with Dan, the only way we could do that was because Apple do have a fairly clunky, but they have an ability to share via iCloud Drive with someone else, and then you just get 14 versions of the same project. But if you can get past that, then it actually does work and it is effective. But very cool, and I like that, and I like Thomas's idea here, where a GarageBand Pro that's not quite Logic but more Pro features in iOS. I think that's the sweet spot. I don't think you could implement the full Logic Pro on iOS with all of the menu, because again, it's menu driven. It's mouse and keyboard and menu driven in Logic because it's a desktop DAW. But if you took some of the features and made like a Pro GarageBand, that's potentially a possibility. Is that something you ever see happening?
I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't have a more professional iOS based DAW, because to begin with, GarageBand on Mac is a menu-based interface, and they managed to port that very, very well over to iOS. So I think if they were to kind of have that touch interface in mind when they ported over these kind of Logic-specific Pro features, I think it could work. I think Thomas is probably right, though. That middle ground might be better, and it would also depend on, if they were to do something like that, how much would they charge if they were going to charge? Because Apple we're talking about. So it'd be interesting.
Subscription model. Perhaps.
Don't even tempt fate, Pete. Don't. Can you imagine?
Just one more subscription to add to the list. Let's bring Dan back into the stream here. That's the wrong button. I'll press this one and actually bring the live version of Dan back into the stream. So, Dan, I mean, you're pretty famous for using a lot of more retro stuff as well. I think you've still got a working Atari ST from memory, running like an old version of Cubase or something going on over there. Is GarageBand in your future, and what do you see happening with GarageBand? And do you find that you're going to be using GarageBand more, less, the same? What's the future look like?
Sorry, I've got a very, very connection here. I don't know what's going on. I heard some of that. I think it's a tricky one with the idea of Logic on an iPad. It can't work. I don't think it can work because of, as you said, the keyboard and mouse driven thing. And the fact this all drop down menus, there's so much on Logic that it's virtually impossible, I think, to get it on iOS, even if the chips are powerful enough in an iPad Pro, for example. I don't think that it doesn't strike me as a workflow that's any good on a touch screen. I mean, most of the comments I see on videos are about people who want to create things like variable tempos.
Mm.
I guess is slightly odd anyway, because most pop songs are recorded to a BPM, and that's it for the entire tune. But I mean, it's things like workarounds, making your own backing tracks, making your own click tracks. It's so straightforward, and it also teaches you about recording. It's all too easy when you've got Logic just to have all the plugins and everything that just does everything for you. Whereas when you have a piece of kit like GarageBand, which is still amazing and the sound quality is really good, especially if you start adding ancillary bits to it, that you learn about how things used to be done, and therefore how to circumvent problems. I put together a lot of packages. My latest video is about the Yamaha MD8, really old mini disc machine, and I put together a package for these two girls. They're 10 and 12 or something, and I said to them, right, this is yours. I've given them a compressor, an equalizer, a CD recorder, and a reverb unit that's connected to this MD8. And I said, if you can learn to use this, it means that when you get onto a computer-based system, you'll literally know your way around it in minutes. And I think GarageBand does teach you a lot about the recording process, I believe. So I think the future of it, I think it's so powerful. Every time I show somebody GarageBand and it's something they've never seen before, they're just open-mouthed at it. And the fact that it's instantly forward compatible with Logic, it seems to be just a very well thought out flow from starting a project on iOS and going over to a Mac. But equally, if you want to stay on iOS, things like Final Touch, you can really get a great sound just on an iOS device. So future wise, I don't know. I mean, I'm not very good at predicting or sort of thinking about the sort of future things. I mean, it's a nice surprise when you get things like the Mark Ronson package, and it's like, oh, great! I just had to press a button and get that, and it was £0 and 0 pence. I don't know. The tempo track thing does come up a lot in comments. Really, mostly that.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. No, it's there's a lot there that we could probably talk for hours about features we'd like to see, and I think you're right. I think the simple ones, and it came out of your video too, Patrick, is that people want to be able to have multiple tempos, and they want to be able to change things up with the tempo. They want to be able to master, so have a decent one master track in there, and a little bit more flexibility with things like automation. But we're not far from it, and I think, Dan, to your point, GarageBand's a lot more like using a 4-track recorder or a hard disk recorder, in that it's like load up a track, hit record your thing in, load up your next track, hit record. It's very much that sort of workflow like we used to use. And I am a little bit sad that some folks that use different workflows probably don't even learn about how that actually works. And I don't think we need to focus on the fact that, hey, in the old days it was a piece of 8-track tape and you had to actually rewind it and record it. I don't think any of us are busting to go back to those days where you had to sit there with a razor blade and split up your tape to try and make an edit. But at the same time, a lot can be learned from the past about this sort of stuff. Now, Dan, your Wi-Fi is about to implode, so I might actually get you to say your final farewells and any final parting thoughts, and then I might let your internet connection go and have a little lie down and a cup of tea. So, what would you like to finish off here? Anything you'd like to let folks know about, or your final parting thoughts on GarageBand?
Well, I think it's you've just nailed it on the head, really. If you can use, I mean, the Beatles recorded Sergeant Pepper on 2 J37 4-track recorders at Abbey Road in 1966, whatever it was, and it was just the creative process that I think is so crucial to maintain, and something that I think GarageBand does afford you a bit more. It does force you to make decisions I mean, I liked your Pete you put up about automating reverb by having a reverb track that you then automate you change the volume on that track. I mean, that's just a genius way of thinking around a problem, and it shows a sort of determination to make the very best of the kit that you've got. I mean, I've also compared the fact that, in 1979, a 32-track digital recorder and a desk was about $500,000. And you needed a building and an electricity capability to run the thing. And now we have that same thing in the palm of our hand. Of course, it's not the same sort of sound quality, perhaps, but the possibilities really are endless. And I'm flabbergasted that it exists, and I'm very glad that it exists, and I extol the virtues of it to everybody.
Brilliant stuff, and very, very well said. And we've got a Beatles reference in there. For
Did you
Russ,
guess all that?
There. We got all of that, and you're getting our response about 10 seconds later. So we're going to let your internet signal have a wee rest there while we jump over here and find out from Patrick about anything that you had for parting words, final comments, or anything else that you would like to add.
Not really, just congratulations once again, Pete. I don't know if we've said this enough today, but well done. 100 episodes in. You're about to hit 100,000 subscribers. More power to you, man.
Well,
thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, and thank you for being on, and thank you to everyone who's here, because we say it a lot, and it sounds really corny, and it is, but it's YouTube. It's not me tube, it's not Patrick tube, it's not Dan tube, it is YouTube. So the fact that we can share this stuff, and that I was chatting to Patrick in the pre-show that because he said, 100, how are you feeling about 100 episodes of this? And I'm like, and we didn't talk about this, so I'll finish on this, that this show actually came out of a show that I did with this man here, with Steve, clearly epic Steve, that we did. It was a 30-minute show. Like, if you think we had problems with audio today, Steve and myself, sometimes we would sound like we were legitimately underwater because we were using Facebook, we were using our phones. It was just not coming. It wasn't great. But what we found out was that there was a passionate community of people who would tolerate anything if it meant that they got to talk about GarageBand. And at that point, we had, I think, about 700 or 800 members of the GarageBand users Facebook group, which is now, despite the fact that it's locked me out, which is a whole other story with something to do with Facebook and their access, but I can't get into the group right now. I blame you. I'm calling you out, Mark. Notice that this stream's not on Facebook. I actually removed it. It's just on YouTube because I'm like, I don't trust what's going on that they're going to let me actually stream. But yeah, we started the show, and yeah, to have a passionate community of people and everyone on the same page. And I think the great thing about GarageBand, and I'll finish with this point, is that GarageBand people are like some of the nicest people because they create with whatever they have. And like some people may legitimately just have a secondhand iPhone 6S that they bought for $100 at Cashies, and yet they can create music with the latest version of GarageBand, just like someone that might buy themselves a $2,000 brand new iPad Pro. And I think having that barrier to entry removed and having people that just are oozing with humility and just want to make great music and just want to share their passion for music, that's what GarageBand's all about. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist when you go to the more professional DAWs in your Logic and in your Pro Tools and everywhere else, but I think that we have a much higher ratio. I think almost everyone who creates on GarageBand is doing it for the right reason, which is for fun, it's for love of music, and it's for joy. So that is a very, very cool thing.
Hit the nail on the head, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you. I want to thank Dan. We won't thank Dan's internet, but thank you, Dan, for sticking with us and for doing that. We'll bring him in here to say goodbye. But thank you to Dan as my guest. Thank you to Patrick from the GarageBand Guide. Do go down to the description where I've got links to all of what I think are the highlights of the videos from Patrick and Dan, as well as links to their channel where you can check out everything that's going on over there. Thanks everyone for being here. Jade Starr is up next too. Speaking of amazing creators who use iOS and use all the apps and that I'm envious of. Jade's like the software version of Dan. What he does with hardware, Jade does with software. Like she puts it all together, and I'm just like, I can't can't. I'm overwhelmed. I just want to go back to my GarageBand and just use the piano. But thank you for you for being here. Do jump over and check out Jade's show now. And on behalf of my guests, 100 shows. I'll see you next week for show 101 because we're not stopping. Thanks everyone for being here. We'll catch you next time.